Welcome back to our Spring Boot series. Today I would like to talk about this annotation which is called RequestParam. Previously we have talked about this path variable which allows us to call APIs using this format, meaning that I want a specific user identified by this attribute here on the users, and then we match here the ID to this variable, and we can call the methods internal like getUserById. But there are other scenarios like, okay, I want to search for users, but I don't want to use the ID. I don't know the ID. I just want users that belong to a specific department, or in email ends with a specific domain and they belong, maybe they are admins, they are internal or external users. There are other kinds of scenarios that we want, and we probably want to provide one or more than one filters. And in that case, the RequestParam is the best approach. The RequestParam, by the way, allow us to do something like this. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, when you use this question mark, and you can do something domain equals, let's say, fin, and department, not fin, but sales, for instance, meaning that I want users that belong to this department, and the symbol is already saying domain. Let's say the domain for me, in this case, it is the suffix of the email. The email, you have an identification, okay, then you have the @ symbol, and then you have a domain on the right side. And it's a way for you if you want to filter users by domain. Sometimes some companies have subdomains if they are multi-regional, and it's a way to find users rather than creating an additional attribute on the table. I created this approach just for educational purpose. There are other ways for sure to implement it, because my target here is for you to learn how to use the RequestParam. But the difference between these are this one. This is the pattern for the path variable. This is the pattern for this one. So let's see an example and how to implement this. So first I did some changes. I add the column department to our table of users. So the previous version was this one. I added this department. Department can be something like sales, HR, IT, and things like that. And I provided more users here using insert into users. Of course, I added the department here. I had to change the data. Now I'm using user IT, user1 IT, because for the department you have IT, HR, and 3 for sales. So when we are displaying, just to be fast to understand if our application is working correctly or not, I suffixed the username with the department. It's not the best practice in a real scenario. This is just for educational purpose. Same for HR, and I even create an external user called external1, and you can see here the domain of the email. I put differently. This one it's finance me, and this one it's support me. So we could have at least 2 attributes to filter on the address when we are calling the REST API, and let's say attributes with specific meaning. It will be very strange to filter by password or by name. Maybe name could be useful, but yeah, who wants to query users by name to return multiple users? It's to ask what if they are on the same family. It's quite strange, right? That's why I'm using the email and department as a filters to train and to understand better our RequestParam. Okay. Now, of course, I had to change also the class user, adding the department. And of course, on the constructor, I added the department. I added the get and set here and the toString here. We are not using the toString at this time, but further videos, it will be necessary to do some system out to understand what's happening behind the scenes. And let's say already talk about the data, the schema, the user, and of course, I had to create some services on the service here. But I will explain when we execute the RequestParam. So let's return to our REST controller and explain the request parameter. So I provided this different way to query the departments to avoid conflicts with the users. So I'm using department search. Of course, later I'm almost sure that I will refactor this class and have a specific REST controller for departments. But for now, let's say that everything belongs to the user, but it's not common for the users table specify the departments and things like that, more contact information or business information on the users. Okay, but for educational purpose, let's say that it's a good idea to have departments in the users table. Okay, so there are two different parameters that we can provide. One of them is optional, like this. When we put required false, it means that it's not necessary to specify the DOM, which is related with our domain. And domain, I'm targeting domain as the right part of the email, meaning this part here. Okay, maybe all of this, or maybe just this part, or maybe this part. It's just a string that represents the ending of the email. Okay, so it allows us to query users based on which company they came from. For instance, our internal users, it's finance me fine. External users, it will be on different companies, so I can query which users in a specific department are internal or external, rather than create a specific attribute for internal and external. It's a good idea to have an internal external attribute. Yeah, it's a good idea to have it just a bit, say it's internal or external. There is no third option, I think. But in our case, I want to be simpler and create a kind of a different way to query this. Okay, so in our case, it's not required, and if it's not provided, we assume that we are asking about internal users belonging to this domain. But the department, I can state and say, okay, it's required. You always have to write something like this. This one, it's mandatory. Okay, you cannot ignore this one. And the name that I'm searching here, it will be dep. So it will be something like this: DOM equals fin, for instance, and dep equals sales. So this name, it is this one, and the DOM, of course, it is this one. And these variables are the ones for us as programmers to use in our code. These ones represent the external names, and the variables here, of course, are the internal names. Of course, I create this method, search users from departments, and provide the department domain. And one thing that we are sure that both have values, both were provided here on the address. So we don't care about if it's null or not, more or less. But let's say that we don't have to at this time to worry about that. So here I'm just asking on the service. So the REST controller calls the server, and the service control asks for the repository. There's no validations here. Of course, it's a good practice always, since it's a public method, to have some documentation at least and provide some defense mechanism against nulls or empty strings. Maybe something that we don't want to provide to the user repository. So it's a good practice. But that's for clean code lessons, which is not our target at this time. So I create this method here, search users. Of course, I change these ones to add the department on the queries and get here. Okay, the same for our get user by ID, our previous one. But now this new method is very similar to the other ones, and you can see there are a lot of repetition. So I'm sure that you and I are eager to reach the JDBC and JDBC client and Hibernate lessons to clean a little bit this code, because there are a lot of repetition that will be it will disappear when we introduce other technologies to query the database. So here for the search users from departments, we provide department domain, and we are filtering here by both the department and email. The email is using like because we are not targeting the whole string. We are just doing a kind of a pattern matching. And the thing that we provide here is just the end part of the email. And that's why here on the set string, on the parameter, here we are targeting completely the department, but here we are concatenating, saying, okay, it's the right part. This is a SQL symbol to say any character concatenated with something that we provide on the right. Meaning if we provide like this fin here, this fin will be the domain. It means that in our data, it will fit all of them, because all of them, the left part, it's that symbol, okay, and this is the right part. So everyone will appear. But if you write this one, only these users will appear, but this one will be ignored. And of course, the opposite is also true. If I provide support me fin, only this one will be displayed and the other ones will be ignored. That's a trick that you can do for this kind of scenarios where you are using when are working with domains. and that's why we have this notation. And then it's the same that we did before. So execute the query, it's a result set, and we iterate all over the results, and we just add to our array list of users and return the list of users. And that's it. So let's see this working. Let's put this to run. Let's play. Let's see if everything is okay. You can show here everything that you already configured. The DevTools. It's always good for you to look into the log if everything is okay. You can see we are using Tomcat. There are other servers that you can use here. Usually Tomcat, it's most popular. We are using the H2 for the database. We are enabling actuators. Okay, we are using port 9000 for our service under the context path finance, meaning that in address we should use this port and this string there, and the dispatcher servlet, which is the front controller for Spring Boot. That let's say let's call it for now, it's the brain of everything that we are doing before reaching the API control. Okay, so now let's see what's happened here. So let's call the users. This is one that we previously developed. So every user is here, the 7 users. You can see here the external one. I'll just maybe do some zoom here. The external one, and you have here the finance me, which are the other users. Okay, but let's use now our departments, and let's say we want to call the department sales, where we have 3 users. If you see here, we have this one, user 5, 6, and 7. The difference, it's in the domain, because this one is using support and this one is using finance. So when we execute this, you can only see 5 and 6, and the 7 doesn't appear. Why? If you remember here in our REST control, when we don't provide the domain, it will target this one by default. This will be the default value. And if you go to the data here, the external user, which is the 7, the ID 7 here. Okay, you cannot see because it's an auto number. It's a 7 one. The domain is different. It's support me thing. Okay, that's why you don't see it here. If you want to see it, maybe we can provide one. There are 2 ways for do this. One is write directly the support fin here, so we can see the external one. So we see the 7, but the other ones disappear. But since they belong to the same domain fin, we can just remove this one, and all of them are under the fin. Okay, so, and you can see here that you can see all the 3 users that belong to department sales. Okay, now we can say something like HR, and you have the department HR for the users, and why not? Let's see the IT, which are the other 2, the rest of them. And you can see IT here, which are the other users. Okay, this is how request parameter works. What if I don't provide nothing? Of course, you have, it's not an, let's say, a specific error, but there are some error. Why it's not an error? Because it's not an exception from it's just a 400, it's not a 500. 400 means bad request, meaning that, okay, I received your request, but I don't have any API to respond to you. When you see a 500 here, and something that I should talk in a further video about the codes, headers, and things about when I address HTTP protocol in more detail, I will explain better that. But when you have the 500, it means that something wrong happening on the server, some internal server error. Okay, that is bad. But now the 400, which is starts with the name bad, it's not, which is bad request. It's bad, but it's only the request. Say, okay, you made me a request that I don't understand. I received your request, but yep, I don't talk that language. So because he's expecting at least the depth. Okay, and you can see here on details here, required request parameter depth for method parameter. Okay, you can avoid this message. I will, in a future video, address this with some specific annotations. You can create methods, say, okay, when there's an error in this controller, please catch and return this message. And maybe we want to provide a different message or page with a more nice visual. Okay, that is possible. You don't have to show this to the end user. Maybe you want to just return a very nice message, or even a very good response, not 400 maybe, or maybe on 400, but with a message that you that you create for yourself, for your application. So I don't like to end this video with an error, but I want to explain that this error exists. So let's return with our sales department here, our internal users, and this was the subject of this video that I want to show you today before going to more detail about HTTP, beans, and some repository technologies or others that I invite you to put on comments and ask for them. So I hope this was useful for you. I hope that now you have more tools to use in your business, or maybe you are working for a company and you are using my videos to improve your knowledge in Spring Boot, maybe you want to create a Spring Boot application, or you are working inside one. So I hope this was really useful for you. So please subscribe, share this with your friends. Be free to comment. I have all the zips with all this code. Maybe one of these days I put on the GitHub for you to download. But if you follow my videos, which I think it's more productive, and you implement everything that we are doing, usually I create small videos, probably not in time because I talk too much, I know, but I really like to explain in detail all the subject. But if usually I try to create, I was saying, small videos with small increments, so you understand everything. You can take it as nuggets or cookies. Say, okay, this is about request parameter, let me learn about this. But if you are following the videos, you are still building an application with all of this technology. So thank you for watching, and expect more for my future videos.